Hello, everyone. That's a way to start, right? Off mute. What's up, folks? My name is Omar. I'm a host here at Watchers Talk, coming at you from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada. With my guest today is Michael Feeley from the UK, and we carry the saga forward with the Looking Glass and the project Looking Glass. So let's do a couple of shout outs out there. Big John, hello, welcome, John. Thank you very much for being here today. And so far, that's the only shout out. What a way to start the show yesterday with Frank Jacob. That was incredible. Our stream was hacked about 14 minutes in. And as you guys recall, we had all kinds of echoes and stuff going on. And we had shifted timelines there. Three of them, actually. There was a 10-second echo and then three different echoes coming in. So that was a lot of fun. And that will be going in the documentary as a highlight. So Frank had a lot to say yesterday, right? Very, very amazing. A lot of great information. I still need to disseminate what he said, but from what I recall, the thing that stood out for me yesterday was those J rods, and you can insert the J rods, and you can actually travel from here to there, and that was pretty interesting. Talked about CERN, that was really interesting. Majestic 12 and them killing one of their own. That was pretty interesting. And what else did we learn? We talked about the inner Earth and how Frank Jacob, when he came across this, he shifted the conversation to consciousness, so that we talk about consciousness instead of talking about the false narrative and false flag events that they may be trying to create in order to fulfill their own timelines. So that was really brilliant by Frank to divert the conversation, so to say. So now everybody's talking like we are right here in the factor of consciousness. So Richard Minnick, how are you, good sir? Thank you very much for being here. Bill Van Horn, hello. Thank you for being here. Mountain Devil, Lizzie, welcome. Thank you for being here. Amazing. Thanks, guys, for being here. Please give this video a like and give it a share as well, because we need to get this message out there. And that's really the idea behind this week here of the Looking Glass, on raising awareness on this factor, so that if these guys even do try something, our consciousness is going to prevail, and we will create our own timeline. It's supposed to default back into one master timeline anyways in 2030. No matter what these guys do, it always comes back and collapses to the single timeline. And that kind of really began in 2012. And from what I understand, they shut all of their technology off. There's like 50 of them, 50 plus devices they have across the planet, and the elites have them, the governments have them, militaries have them, royal families have them, and business leaders have them. So they've been creating this narrative, like we've been saying all this time, that they're creating this false reality, that none of this is actually real. And it kind of turns out that it wasn't a conspiracy theory after all, that these guys were engaged in creating different timelines. And that's where perhaps the Mandela effect can be explained, is these guys tinkering with this, with the timelines. So our conversation continues for the rest of the week. Today I have with me Michael Feeley, and then we're going to have Augie Noss. You guys all know Augie Noss. He's a brilliant guy. We're going to have him with us. And then we're going to have Paul Wallace towards the end of the week. And then we will have Kiera Windrider joining us as well towards the middle of the week. And then we're going to have our buddy Brad Olson from CCC Publishing. And then after all that is said and done with, once we've spoken to all our speakers, then on April the 30th, we are going to have a panel discussion. We will bring them all back, minus, unfortunately, Paul Wallace, because it will be like 2 o'clock in the morning for him. But if he's willing to soldier it up and be brave and stay up until 2 o'clock to be part of the panel, he is more than welcome to do so. I know Michael has done that before. A lot of kudos to him for that. So it's going to be an excellent panel, and just a wonderful discussion carrying on all week. Going to have lots of notes towards the end of the week. And as I mentioned, going to turn this into a documentary after this is complete so that we have some reference and understand as to what this looking glass really is and what's coming in 2030. And Agenda 2030 is tied to all of this too, right? And Agenda 2030 is really in all of our cities. You can look it up on your city's website and you will find it there. We've talked about that here on many times. And I'm sure the Georgia Guidestones is somehow connected to this as well. And the Greater Treaty is connected to this. The Bilderberg Group, the World Economic Forum is connected to this. There's a lot. This is very, very deep. And this is just what we've learned just in one talk with Frank Jacobs. So let's bring on Michael Feeley. And then we will carry this conversation of consciousness and creating this new timeline for ourselves of 2030. So Michael Feeley is a former police officer in the UK. He is a published author of 7 books, has his own publishing company, is an international speaker, local speaker, radio talk speaker, webinars, and code breaker, and kind of what have you. A lot of esoteric knowledge comes from Mike. As you guys know, Michael and I, we've done lots of work over the last bunch of years. Michael has a playlist under our video archives. There's like about 20 videos there. Check them out because they're just full of knowledge and some top level knowledge. And share those videos out too, guys. So hello, Michael Feeley. How are you, boss? Thank you for being here today.
No, it's a pleasure. Thank you again. And yes, I did stay up once till 2 o'clock, but that's okay. I don't need any thanks or applause for that.
It's always fun when you can do that, right? But not everyone is in the position to do it, right? So I don't push people to do so. But it would be nice to have Paul Wallace on the panel, and maybe he'll give a recorded message. But who knows? We'll just carry on with what we have to do and create this timeline. And as we're talking about these timelines, Mike, there's something really interesting that is brewing up here today, and that is the sale of Twitter is almost pretty much done and complete. And Elon Musk is going to own Twitter, and he's going to privatize that company. And then chances are he's going to bring back Donald Trump and all the other people that have been banned. So that's going to have a significant impact on a timeline. What do you think?
Absolutely. Again, it's one of those things, isn't it? You just have to see what happens, and we soon will. We'll see which direction it goes in. Once it does happen, it's all predictive at the moment. It's all predictive text, of course, at the moment. But soon as the deal is done, and then we will be able to see what direction we're going in with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep an eye on this development because it's it kind of comes at an odd time when the Guardians of the Looking Glass, they've released several videos. I'm not sure if you've had the chance to listen to them, but within them, they were saying that there was going to be a false flag attack about April 18th to the 20th, and that we can actually prevent that from happening. And it kind of almost happened with that New York subway shooting. And then now there is another date that's been set of May 30th, I believe, that there's going to be another false flag event. And then between now and then, we have the sale of this, like one of the biggest tech companies in the world happening. So I kind of find it, ironic and not coincidental, because I don't really think anything's coincidental, but pretty ironic that all this is playing out at the same time. Kind of if you look at it from a chessboard, all these pieces are being moved, and the other guy knows that he's going to be checkmated in like 7 moves, but he's just going to keep pressing forward. And the only way for him to win is if the good guy actually makes a mistake and loses that checkmate. And I think we're the good guys, and the cabal is like the bad guy, right? They've been using this technology all this time to create events and the Mandela effects and kind of what have you to favor them more so than everyone else on the world.
No, absolutely. I do. When people pass dates of specific incidents, then I always say it can make you look a bit silly when you start throwing dates around. Mm-hmm. But because everyone is expecting something to happen on that particular date. Nothing happens on that date. They become disillusioned, and they say, it's all a conspiracy theory. So we have to be careful when we start banding dates about. But nothing, as you say, nothing is a coincidence. And like you said, if there's 7 moves left on the chessboard, then they know very well that the opposition have 6 moves before you get to the 7. So that they're gonna go to the very, very end, because where else do they have to go?
Yeah, they have nothing else.
They have nothing else. They're going to be the rat in the corner that fights.
Yeah,
So
pretty.
we need to be careful with dates, but things are happening and things will happen. And yes, there are multiple timelines. And again, when I go through the presentation, it talks about different things, but all we can do is be steadfast, concentrate on what we need to do, and make sure we're organised in doing that. Because if we're organised, you may have the Roman army that's outnumbered, but the Roman army was organised, and that's why it won most of its battles. So if you are organised, if you are steadfast, if you are strong in your own sovereignty, in your own divinity, in your own strength, then really you are unmovable.
Yeah, true that. I agree that we should be careful with placing dates out there, right? Because the type of world we live in, people are expecting, right? And then when something doesn't happen, we tell them, well, we prevented it. And then they'll say, well, what did you prevent? Right. And then, it gets into that. And yeah, I agree to, a point that we should, not put any dates out there and just let the consciousness form its thing, like you're saying, and be the creators that we are, and press forward in trying to create what we're trying to create, and pay no never mind attention to them.
Absolutely. Of course, dates are timelines. So,
Yeah.
when we talk about timelines, and timelines can be changed and timelines can be diverted, if we say the 30th of May or the 30th of April or the 30th of September, then that's a timeline. And that can be, and it can be made to look, well, it can be made to look a bit foolish. And even though you may come at it with the knowledge, if they just shift the timeline slightly and alter the date, then you start to look a bit foolish. So, as I say, just be careful with dates, really.
Yeah, we would have to really first understand what time is before we can, start throwing around the timelines, right? If we look at time, like a time, if we see it as like a lower dimension that exists in the lower dimensions, then it must vibrate on its own, and then each vibration could be considered a timeline, kind of like a skipping rope. You got 2 kids on one end and they're skipping, and then you see that line of the jumping rope. It's creating new timelines, or there could be a timeline, but who knows, right? But first thing we have to explain is what time is, because I've used the term before, and I've talked about time lots before. Maybe I've mentioned this to you before, Mike, where I've said, we don't really understand time because we try to measure everything based off of Earth time and our astronomical distance from the sun to us. And that's kind of how we're measuring time, because if you're born on Pluto and Pluto takes 240 years to orbit the sun, 240 Earth years, then on Pluto, how old would you really be? Would you be like 1 year old, or would you be 240 years old? Or how about Nibiru, right? If you're on Nibiru and you're in Anunnaki and there's a 3,600 year cycle, around your star, then how old are you? Are you like 1, or are you like 3,600? So we don't really have
Yeah.
a full understanding of what time really is. This
Would
could be
you?
really defined more as parallel universes, you think, instead of timelines?
Well, I do in the presentation in a moment. I do explain time, but in terms of the 3,600 year orbit of Nibiru, that's talking about a cycle and not a planet, because that's how the Sumerians used to write a large circle, 3,600. So again, we going on the basis of a story, really, which represents something else to what it's being
Mm-hmm.
purported to mean. But a bit what time is, and of course you are right. What time is not a static thing; it's a fluid thing, it's a perceptional thing, and again, when we go through the presentation, that will become a lot clearer as to what that perception is. But
Mm-hmm.
yes, there are, I say, lots of timelines that we can be in. Physically, personally being in parallel timelines. At the time, we had physical evidence of that I've been there and come back. And a lot of the time, you go into these other timelines and don't even know, because
Mm-hmm.
things may look the same, people may look the same. It still may be 12 o'clock on your wristwatch, but there's a subtle difference in terms of the reality and the things that you're doing. Like on one instance, I was sitting on the computer, and my wife Sarah come down the stairs, and I was working on really advanced, complicated computer code. And she looked and thought, "You don't know that." But then went in the kitchen and came back, and I wasn't doing that. I was doing something else. But for that moment in time, I was doing complex computer code, which I can't do. I don't know anything about that,
Mm-hmm.
but I was doing that. And then when she looked on the computer later, it's actually saved on the computer. So I had been doing that complex physical code, computer code, but not here. So everything was the same. The reality looked the same. The room was the same. The computer was the same. I was the same, but I was doing something that I wasn't aware that I was doing somewhere else. So we often shift in between these things, and sometimes we know that, and sometimes we don't.
How interesting. That's really cool. You told me that before, and I'm looking forward to hearing it again. Just want to quickly go through a few comments here. Um, it's one that I started here. It's from Rose Ease, and she says, "I'm sorry, not trying to be annoying, but I still don't understand." Okay, so Rose, it's I'll do a quick brief on it. So the Project Looking Glass is a technology that was discovered in Iraq that is very old, from Sumerian times. And where the Sumerian got it, that's anyone's guess. They may have created themselves, or it could have been given to them from someone else. But anyways, when you look into it, it shows you the timeline of your life leading up to that particular moment. And if you insert ideas in your consciousness and look at this looking glass, then it shows you alternative timelines as to what can happen and the different things that can happen. Now, as you move forward, you can also take these rods that are known as J rods, and you can insert those into this cube type of technology, and you can physically travel to these timelines, or across the world, or across the galaxy, or into another universe. And now the interesting thing is that there's 50 or so of these things that are on the planet that have been used by banksters and the elites and governments and the military and business leaders and such, where they've inserted their idea into this looking glass, and it showed them a timeline which benefited them. So they decided to create events that will benefit them, where the narrative of humanity can be directed so that that timeline can be created. And then thus we just continue on. And that's what I was saying earlier on, the false realities, because they've been artificially um, created. And so anyways, and there's other technology involved in this as well that we're, I'm sure, going to learn as the week goes forward. And there's also, and believe it or not, there are schematics online that are available that you can create your own looking glass technology. Now, the elites, they stopped using this looking glass technology back in like 2012 or so, because every time they put an idea into this looking glass which will favor them, um, it always collapsed into a like a master timeline, so to say, where there's an intervention, it seems like, that's happening, and humanity doesn't go off the deep end and goes into like World War III, nuclear war, and famine and disease and things like that. And this is kind of the timeline that the cabal is trying to create by creating these false flag events that we've been seeing over the last little while. So every time they create these, they collapse back into humanity always ascending, and that's kind of why they've stopped really using this technology. So they say they've stopped using it, but you can't really take them at their face value. So, anyways, there's a group out there called the Guardians of the Looking Glass, and they're former intelligence officers and business leaders and politicals and things like that have come together to begin to release this information. And they've released 4 videos now so far, and I'll share the links to those videos as Mike is speaking in the comments so that you guys can go and check out the channel and subscribe to that channel as well to show them support in what's going on. So the latest video that they released, there's supposed to be like some kind of a code in it, and it has an amulet that leads you to an amulet. And supposedly this amulet was held by Buddha, Christ, and Muhammad, and then it disappeared. And there's a code within this particular video and the text that they've put up. There was a code in the previous video as well, which was deciphered, and someone did something which I don't really fully understand right now, but I will as days go by. So that's really the lowdown, Rose. I hope you understand. And the Mandela effect is like, I think it was back in the 1980s that a lot of people remember Nelson Mandela dying in prison. And as we recall, right now that Nelson Mandela was released from prison and went on to become the president of South America, and then eventually died about a decade or so ago. And then when things begin to change a little bit, you know, like in songs and movies and things like that, things that you used to remember that everyone else remembers, but now it's different. Like, is it Jif peanut butter, or is it Jiffy peanut butter, or is it Fruit Flakes with FROOT, or is it FRUIT? Bugs Bunny, same thing. There's like subtle differences and things and that have happened over the course of like last 30 years or so, and they're unexplainable. So those are called the Mandela effect. And I feel that the Mandela effect on the timelines, they could be interwoven, and they're kind of just going like a sine wave where they're leaving an imprint of one another onto each other, like their timeline, they're imprinting it onto ours, and ours is being imprinted onto theirs. So that's kind of in short, Rose. And now I'll hand it over to Mike, and we'll bring his presentation on, and we'll get into it.
Thank you, Omar. You should be able to see someone holding like a little looking glass type thing on the presentation.
Yeah, I see a guy holding a glass. If you want to change your screen so I can see that it changes. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it
Wonderful.
changes, and it's yours, Mike. And as soon as you're ready for a discussion, let me know, and I'll be right here.
Okay, thank you. As soon as I get to the end of the presentation, I'll stop sharing the screen, and then we'll come back and have a chat. But thank you very much. So, guys, thank you very much for being here again. This is, again, my contribution to the week. So really, the definition of the Looking Glass project is the Looking Glass uses wormhole technology. It can see the past and a possible future. It can see the future of one timeline or several timelines. And according to stories, the Looking Glass device is able to teleport to other worlds. He said, as Omar said in the introduction, that he came from ancient Sumer, which is the modern day Iraq, which is obviously the center of the Anunnaki story and different things. But I will say that this is nothing to what they will find when they actually go the 980 feet down below the Great Pyramid, where you have voice activated doors that you cannot see with the naked eye. When they penetrate that monument, then the technology that they will find there is much more potent than what they have now. For this talk, as with tradition, I'm going to look at it from a different angle. There's lots and lots of speakers this week, good speakers this week, who will tell you all about all this technology, what it can do, what it does do, the people who are in possession of it. But I'm going to take it in a different direction, because I'm one of the very few people who have experienced all of the things that the looking glass is supposed to be able to do. And I did those things not with advanced technology, but with the body, with our bodily supernatural abilities that we all possess. So yes, you do have the technology that can do these things, but technology is not the only means to do them. So this evening, I'm just going to take you through some of my experiences that prove that what is stated that the Looking Glass project can do does actually happen, is happening, because I have personally experienced it. So I've seen wormholes form in the sky, and this was when I was on night duty in the police force, when all of a sudden, in a beautiful clear night, this wormhole appeared like a serpent. A craft came out of the wormhole. The wormhole then closed, and the craft continued across the sky. So the wormhole literally just dissipated as quick as it just appeared, and it left the craft to now fly away within this dimension. I've even been in dense forestry, so dark you couldn't see more than 4 or 5 inches ahead of you, and all of a sudden there was a bright light like this one had just appeared in between the trees, lasted for about 30-40 seconds, and then disappeared. When I look back at the photograph that was taken, there were orbs either exiting or going into this particular bright light, which was so bright you couldn't actually look into it. I've seen people coming back to their bodies and people leaving their bodies. I've seen what is known as a doppelganger, and the story of this was my wife and I was at a party, and I looked at the entrance door, and this lady walked in who we both knew, and I said to my wife, "Oh look, there's so and so." She looked and also saw this lady walk in to the party. Several days later we saw her and said, "Did you enjoy the party on Saturday night?" And she said, "I wanted to go but I couldn't make it." And we said to her, "Well, we saw you there." He said, "Well, I wasn't there." Hence to say, this is what is a doppelganger. It's basically an apparition of someone living. I have actually personally travelled into the past, literally time travel, and this was by conscious remote viewing. I went back to an event 159 years previous to the time that I remote viewed back in time. I actually went back to Victoria, and my consciousness was transported back to an old creaky cottage where I was sitting there looking at the curtains, blue curtains. There was a creaky wooden cottage door in the right hand corner of the room. That door then opened, the curtains moved because of the draft from the door, and I heard a young girl's voice say, "Here he is." Basically, I went back in time to witness the murder of a 14-year-old girl, which had been 159 years previous in the year 1850. But the event was still occurring for her, somewhere in another timeline. It shook me that much, it traumatized me that much, that I couldn't actually sleep for 6 months without the light on in the bedroom, for fear that I was going back to that place again. Another incident is when I was sitting, this is the actual building, and on the right is the actual room, and as I was sitting there, I looked up, and this character was looking back at me. Now, for those who don't know, this is King Charles I, who was part of the English Civil War, the Cavaliers and the Roundheads. And in the year 1492, King Charles I, having lost the English Civil War, was beheaded. But I can tell you, when I saw him, he was actually complete. Sometimes, even we are seen as ghosts in other realities. In other words, they are known as pseudo-appearances. We drift into other realities, and the entities that are living in those realities, to them, we are the ghosts. I have seen numerous shadow people, three-dimensional shadows. One morning in particular, at 6 a.m. in the morning, something was violently shaking my bedroom door, and as I jumped out and opened the door to see what was going on, I actually saw a shadow person walking through another bedroom wall in the house. Now, this is an upstairs bedroom, so it was 25 to 30 feet in the air, and this shadow person just walked through the wall. Now, a shadow loses one dimension in its projection. So whereas I'm a three-dimensional being, my shadow is two-dimensional. So if I am seeing a three-dimensional shadow, it must be being cast by a fourth-dimensional object. In 2017, I had another timeline visitation. The shadow literally just appeared alongside me. He had entered my time event, which was surely his future. It really was the alchemy of time, the changing of time, and I've travelled back and things have travelled forward to me. The reason I say this is because they are real. And when people tell you this week that this project, this Looking Glass project, can take you into different timelines, it can take you into the past, it can take you into the future, yes, it can, because I have been to those places. I know that because I have experienced those phenomena. There are multiple realities existing all around us, all the time. My father's house, the universe, has many rooms, dwelling places, abodes. Every one of those spirals that you can see is a galaxy like ours. My father's house has many rooms. Spirit world, other entities, other dimensions is forever around us, and we are continually walking through them. We came here to the East of Eden, biblically speaking. Now, the East of Eden, eastward, means Makedon, which is out of eternity. And Eden is Adon, which means a transitory existence, in other words, a short-lived existence. So we have come out of eternity into a short-lived existence. Garden is Gan, which is a sphere or a place of activity, which is the body or earth. It is a wheel of Ezekiel, because there is the large wheel, which is the universal cycles, and then there's the inner wheel, which is our own cycles of life. Earth is a resonance, which is really the primal vibrating substance, which is the source of all life forms, which is the mother Earth. All realities that we know of and that we don't know of are only a frequency away from each other. And we can see them. If we adjust our minds to a spiritual frequency, we become tuned with them, and then we can interact with them. So what is time? Time is a perception. Omar at the moment is in Canada. It is probably about 1:30 p.m. where he is, and I am in the UK, and it is now approaching 9:30 p.m. where I am. And I know it looks like Omar is cutting my hair there, and he's doing a fantastic job, but nevertheless, there is a time difference. When I speak to Omar, it is my present, but my words are travelling back to my past to speak to Omar in his present moment. His words, when he replies to me, then travel forwards in time to my present moment, which is Omar's future, so that I can hear them. It does get confusing. but nevertheless, we are time traveling in order to speak to each other. Twice a year, on one occasion we put the clocks forward an hour, and on the next occasion we put the clocks back an hour. Where does that time go? That is 2 hours that we've just lost. We've just struck off the clock, and we accept that they've just disappeared. But where have they gone to? In the 1970s in Maryland, there was experiments called time dilation, and it proved that the faster you travel, the more time changes. So if somebody's traveling at warp speed in a jet fighter and somebody's on the ground, time for them will both be different. So time is not rigid, it is fluid. So time is really a series of discrete movements. It's like a movie reel, down as the flickering. So that is pretty much life. Now, if that movie reel speeds up, it gives us a sense or a perception it's speeding up. However, it is still happening within the same gap between the two reels. It is the same frames of reference. It is the same frames of limitation and time. It's just that things have sped up in between those two parameters. Until, of course, we turn the light out for the last time. We go through the complete cycle of life and death yet again. The movie reel is how the brain and the eye works. So when someone says to you, I didn't see the car coming, that is because that car was hiding in between the frames and the eyes and the brain could not see it. I put together an equation for the speed of reality. Now, this is my mathematical equation for the speed of reality. It is basically the square root of time divided by the speed of a thought. And I won't read all that out to you, but I will leave it on there long enough for you to read it yourself. In essence, my speed of reality is 3.3333 meters per second. And this is how I worked that out. Now, the long number that you can see, the 84.852813742,386, was significant because later on in my research I realized that this was one of the sonics within the Great Pyramid of Egypt. So it was this really long number, and the digits were exact in my equation and their sonics of the Great Pyramid. Hopefully by now you've been able to read that, but basically that was my mathematical equation for the speed of our reality. What is the future? And can you actually see into the future? What is destiny? The definition of destiny is the inevitable or necessary fate to which a particular person or thing is destined. So in other words, something in the future, something in a place not now. It is something that we are approaching, coming towards. If you imagine that the future is this boomerang. Now we can hold the boomerang, we can decide how much force we're going to put into throwing that boomerang. We can therefore decide to a greater or less its trajectory in a full circle and how long it will take to come back. That is our prediction of the future. However, there is nothing to stop someone coming in from off camera before it reaches the gentleman who's thrown it to then throw it again. In so doing, they're creating a new circle, a new destiny, a new future. So the future is something that we can...
Mike, your audio is breaking up when the GIF is on.
No problems. These things are not science fiction. And for the unknown forces of nature, so when we look at the future, and as I say, with the boomerang expression, we can, to a certain extent, predict. To a certain extent, we can try and control. And to a certain extent, we can do things that we believe will take us to our desired future, our desired destiny. but it doesn't mean to say that that is what is going to happen. It doesn't mean to say that something can't hijack that, can't interact with that, can't bypass our prediction and our destiny. So if you just think of that boomerang, how much of that is our control, and how much control do we have over others to stop the hijack of our destiny, of our future predictions? So the future is something that we can look towards, but it has not yet happened, and there are many, many different scenarios that boomerang could take. Which direction does humanity go in the future? We can go in multiple directions, but mainly we can go in two. Those who get it, those who don't. Those who understand what reality is, those people who understand, who are hijacking their destiny, their future, and there are those who do not know, who will never know in this cycle of life. So that they are basically the binary choice. Do you or don't you? Left or right? Yes or no? That is the choice that humanity has in its future. Make sure that we are on the right side. Make sure that we are armed with the knowledge. Make sure that we are armed with wisdom. Make sure that we know our place. Make sure that we know what timeline we wish to be on. That concludes the short presentation, and we'll have a chat about what has just been everything else that's going on this week. I'm mute, sorry.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I was just rambling on over here by myself and thought everyone was hearing me.
I'll have to learn to lip read.
That was an incredible presentation, and what I took away from that is that the future is a reference, and we can, if we can see it, right, we can, we're still going to go in the path that we're on, right, because we have these contracts, these soul contracts and such, when we incarnate onto this world. And as a single unit, if we work as a single unit, then with our consciousness we can create the illusion of a timeline that we want to have, because really that's what it is. It's just an illusion of perception of what we want. We want unity, we want oneness, we want everyone to get along, not necessarily even love one another, just simply get along, not mug each other on the streets, put down the guns and jail all the arms people, and and that's the timeline. That's the perception that we want to see it, and that's among some of the things that I took away. But like solving the murder, going back in time, I've listened to that once before. Actually talked about it the first time we did a talk, and I thought that that was pretty incredible. So when I think about that experience, it almost kind of tells me that the technology of the looking glass is based off of somehow some advanced power has taken remote viewing and has somehow created it into a technological thing that can do the same thing which our minds can do, right? So if we wanted to see our own future, then we can go internally and go within the mind, and we'll be able to see the very same thing that you did when you went back in time to solve a homicide.
We can. I mean, what really is, things are a projection from a projector, and often we are the projector, and obviously the imagery, the reality is the projection.
Mm-hmm.
When you start looking into the picture making forces of the soul, which is really a dream state, the dream state is a potential future that is waiting in the unmanifest, the unmaterialized. And depending upon what level of consciousness you are, can often depend upon what dreams become your reality, or at what level you whether they're nice, whether they're nightmares, and so on. So what I was saying about in relation to, yes, there are technologies that can mimic and replicate the supernatural abilities of the body, and of course these technologies exist in Sumer, in the Great Pyramid, in Stonehenge, and all these different places. But we have these supernatural abilities that can do the same thing as these technologies. For argument's sake, the whole basis of the computer is based on consciousness. So
Mm-hmm.
it is a natural well, I say supernatural, it's not supernatural, it is natural that we don't understand. But I use it for want of a better expression. So we have these natural, supernatural abilities anyway, where we can project, where we can consciously guide remote viewers. You know, I know many good remote viewers that can actually specify where they wish to be and consciously go there. I didn't specify anything. I was just taken consciously as a remote viewer to an event that, as far as I was concerned, it was in the past. How can something that was in the past still be happening now? And it's this complex thing, really, but we do have these abilities, and there are technologies that can mimic those abilities. And the reason that I shared with the audience some of those experiences is because throughout this week you are going to be told by a lot of renowned good people that the looking glass does this, the looking glass can do that, the looking glass is said to be able to go into the future, it is said to be able to go in the past. And what I'm saying is, well, these things are true because I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
And if I've done it, so can they. And they can replicate what I've done. They can replicate what is naturally a capability of us all. And so if I've been back in time, I've experienced things coming back forward in time, or whatever that entails. But I've experienced those things, and so what I'm giving is basically validity for everything that there's going to be said previously and from this point on, because it is happening, and I've experienced it firsthand. And yes, these technologies mimic our own innate abilities to do them once you switch those abilities on.
Yeah, when you were saying that, I just had an epiphany, and even earlier on, Bill Van Horn was saying something similar, and I didn't put two and two together until like just now, and actually even responded to his comment without fully, understanding what was going on here. So, okay, I'll put Bill's on here first, and then I'll explain what I'm talking about. So Bill Van Horn says, when we do that, Omar, there will be memories of the interaction from childhood that secret teachers we had who gave us unknowable information was actually us from the time we remote view, right? So that's a very good point. And I was speaking about this yesterday, and I spoke about this before as well too. Is what I do is when I do zoning, right, or when I do conscious breathing, I take myself back in time, right? I take myself back into my childhood, the traumas and the experiences that were negative that I've had. And I go back and I speak to myself and I counsel myself and I tell myself that everything turned out and all is good. I have a beautiful wife. I've got great kids. I've got a grandbaby, and be happy, all is good. But it's not that I always go back to the doom and gloom. I go back to the happy times as well, and I speak to myself there, and I take the energy from that point, and that loving energy, that excitable energy, and I bring that back with me. And I noticed that doing that over the course of last few years has really helped me to understand myself at a much deeper level. But it seems that a different timeline has been created as well, because as Bill was saying, that unknowable information, like, how do I know this? But somehow you have that information in your head. So I really resonate with what he was saying there, was that the secret teachers who gave us unknowable information was actually us from the timeline. That really does make a lot of sense, that that is probably what the case is. Now I want to jump to the next point on your presentation that I found interesting, was when you were talking about the shadow people, and you saw the shadow people. And I spoke about this yesterday as well, where I was saying that, yeah, I do see shadow people as well. My wife sees shadow people. And if you shut the lights off in a room and you just sit there and pay attention, you can actually see these shadow beings and shadow people floating around and moving around and going through walls and through the floor, and that's what the cat is cackling at and chasing and such. Now I wonder, are we dealing with, like a parasitic, like an archontic based being, or is that like an overlap of like another timeline, like a parallel timeline, you know what I'm saying? And that's
Yeah.
happening at the same time, and in their reality, maybe they're physical and they appear like this to us, and then when they observe us, we appear ghostly and as those shadow people on the walls. And because our visual perceptional range and our eyes just can't seem to, do the X-ray vision kind of thing, they appear to be just like shadow people, when in reality it could be an overlap of like another timeline dimensional reality, you think?
Well, there's these different timelines and these different dimensions and different realities all around us.
Mm-hmm.
And how I liken this is, again, if you imagine two-dimensional flatlands, which was actually a famous story of many years ago, two-dimensional flatlands. So in the two-dimensional flatland, every scene is flat. It's
Mm-hmm.
you live in a house which is a square. As far as you're concerned, the doors are closed, the windows are closed. You live in a square, and it's secure. But you don't understand what up is, because that's the third dimension. That's the height.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's 2 dimensions plus height is the third dimension. So you don't know what up is. So if I now, as a three-dimensional being, were to step inside that square, then I have just appeared from nowhere, because they do not know up, which is where I've come into their dimension from. By the
Mm-hmm.
time when you look in different dimensions, because these higher dimensional beings are coming from a dimension that you don't understand, that's a lower dimension, you can't always see them, but you can sometimes hear them. So when people turn around and say, I heard someone shout my name, which has happened to me, I heard people talking, I heard voices, because they're talking from a dimension that you do not understand, so you can't
Mm, I
see
see.
them.
Yeah.
So I step into the square, into two-dimensional square. I have just appeared from nowhere. Now I step out that square, and I have vanished. I haven't. I'm still there, but to them I've vanished. So when people see UFOs coming into our airspace, and they'll see a light there, and then a light there, then a light there will appear, and say, I've seen 7 UFOs. The reality is you've probably seen one that is appearing and just peeking into our dimension, but you're seeing it in dribs and drabs a bit at a time,
I see. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they're coming in from a dimension that we don't know, we don't understand. So
Mm-hmm.
if we're casting a two-dimensional shadow, then a three-dimensional shadow must be a fourth-dimensional being at least. And they're sometimes coming in and out of our reality from a direction that we don't understand. Now, in terms of degrees, the difference between the third and the fourth dimension is 90 degrees. When you look at the geometry of the universe, it's like a grid, like a complete grid. If you wish to shift in between different realities, or from one dimension to the other, you do it at a 90-degree angle. And that is why you see UFOs shooting off at 90 degrees. It is the 90 degrees of separation. In Masonic ritual, the rising of the dead, they bring them up at 90 degrees. It is a spiritual thing. The Masons put 90-degree corners in buildings because it is the 90 degrees of separation. It is the way in which you change direction and change reality. So really, they're coming in and out of our reality from dimensional angles that we don't understand or we can't see.
Yeah.
And
That would
that's
kind of
really,
explain Bigfoot as well, right?
well, the likes of Bigfoot and the likes of Loch Ness are interdimensional travelers. Now, Loch Ness, when you look at the Maui people, and they speak of the Tihanoan, which is
Mm-hmm.
really the river guardian, and if you look at their drawings and you look at Loch Ness, it is an exact match. So
Yeah,
the
we
likes
have
of
the same thing here. We have
yeah,
the Ogopogo in the Okanagan Lake.
yeah. So what you have really is a dimensional river guardian, And sometimes you can see it because it's in this dimension, and other times you can't. And that is the same with the likes of Bigfoot and Yeti, Sasquatch, because they are traveling in between these dimensions, which is not difficult to do. It is not
So
difficult.
would ghosts fall into that same category? Right? Or are ghosts like something different and they're like in a alternate dimension or
Yeah, when somebody physically passes through to the next world, there is also an element of that experience that remains.
mm,
And that element, that conscious element of that experience can take, because it's energy, it's a mirror, it's a reflection of what it once was. It can appear as its former self. So when a medium says, your sister's come back, she's got blonde hair, she's got blue eyes. The reason that she's now masking herself with blonde hair and blue eyes and giving the appearance that she once was is to make connection with you, the viewer.
mhm.
But she's no longer that. But there's still a part of that which is still here. Now there
Kind
are
of like a memory imprint that's
yes,
being left behind and
it's a conscious memory that can manifest into its former appearance to be recognised by the
mhm.
sitter, by the viewer, and it is here. Sometimes it is here because it is trapped here. Now, if you imagine our consciousness now, it can only be aware of one thing, one place. And I've also had experiences where my consciousness has shifted, where I have become the object that I've been observing.
Mhm.
And whilst looking from the object that I'm observing, my consciousness has now shifted to that object. So I'm looking at me, looking at it, but I have no conscious recollection of that, of me looking at it still. Because it's almost like switching the light off here and switching it on somewhere else. Your focus is literally going from there to there, and then it flicks back again. So really, you are flicking through the channels of the TV channels, and your focus is going through the different networks. But you can only put one network on at a time. So we can only have conscious awareness of one thing at a time. Even though our consciousness may be in multiple places, we only have one sort of ability really to be able to focus in one place, which is
Mhm.
this. But that consciousness can shift, and it's called spiritual concentration, which is part of ancient initiations, where they spent sometimes days and weeks just concentrating on one object until they became that object. So instead of thinking and feeling, they became that object.
Ah,
And that's
I
happened to
see.
me. So these remnants of memory, we talked about childhood memories earlier on, and science tells you that memory is cellular. The problem with that is the cells that I have now and not the cells that I had when I was a child. So therefore, if memory is cellular, I should not be able to remember childhood. So in other words, it is from a place that is not cellular. It is from a
Mhm,
place
mhm.
that is not you. It is from a place that you can access as a memory. But if you can access it as a memory, so can other people. I can walk into a library and get the same book that you've just brought back to the library and read the same information. So we we can read each other's thoughts, we can read each other's minds, we can speak telepathically, which is brainwaves. Brainwaves really expand outside of the mind, outside of the skull, so they can be picked up by other things. And these other things can read your thoughts. These other things can look at you. If I'm a Christian and I have a near-death experience, a lot of the time I'm going to come back and say I saw Christ or I saw Mother Mary. That is because there are guardians and entities out there that will take on the appearance to make you comfortable and to make you, so we say, compatible with your belief systems. Or it could be Muhammad, it could be Allah, it could be like Ganesh or Vishnu. So these things can take on the appearance as they wish, but they can take on the appearance of what you're projecting from your mind. Because as we're saying, you're the projector, that is the projection.
Mhm.
But that projection
So
is seen, can be seen.
So let me try to understand this. So when we see these spirits and ghosts, so to say, when when the dude is sitting there and he's smoking a cigar, right, and he's got a hat on, it always makes me wonder, like, why would a ghost have the need to wear a hat or to be smoking a cigar or to be wearing spectacles or drinking tea or whatever the case may be? So
They, they,
that's
they, don't, they don't need to, but in order for you to know who it is and to
yeah, and that's
connect,
yeah, they're
that's how,
giving you that familiarity
yeah.
of something so you don't panic and freak out and run out
No,
the door screaming.
no. Because I tell you, if your father comes from the other side, or the conscious, should we say, remnants of what
Hmm.
of your father's experience comes to you, and there's a medium there saying, "I have a gentleman here now. He wears glasses. He's wearing a brown suit with a pocket watch, and
Hmm.
he's smoking a pipe." You say, "That's my dad." That's the way
Yeah,
that you connect and be identified with. If you
yeah,
come
and
back,
that's what you meant with connection earlier.
yes, because if they're coming through to connect to you, they can't do that unless you know who it is. You know,
Hmm.
if your father come through and he was 6'6" and blonde with blue hair and wearing a skirt, you would think, I don't know who that is. So
Yeah,
they come through in an appearance that is compatible with your memory of that experience.
yeah, that's yeah, I like that. That I don't want to go any further with that.
Well, sure, Brian,
Yeah, I can go out of hand with that one. Okay, so I want to try to understand the you know the faster you travel, time changes, and time is not rigid; it's very fluid. And now, in this reality, in this density that we're in right now, would time only apply right to the like these lower dimensions, right? Say if we go up into the sixth or seventh or eighth dimension, where there may not be any time, right? Because time is like linear, right? It's all happening at the same time. So how is it that time will change, right? If we're, let's say, going at the speed of thought or at the speed of consciousness, which one's actually faster, Mike? The speed of consciousness or the speed of reality?
the speed of consciousness, because
Yeah,
consciousness is not necessarily a physical, material thing, where
yeah.
reality really is. But
But
time.
isn't reality like moving at the speed of consciousness, right? Because if we're projecting and co-creating with our thoughts, then wouldn't that be considered that reality is moving at the speed of consciousness?
Well, you see, it depends upon who's having the thoughts and at what conscious level they are when they have the thoughts, and what
Yeah,
kind
I
of
guess so, right? Like you were saying, either it's on or it's off. You get it or you don't.
when you look at time, which is, as I said, really is discrete, a discrete series of movements. 3 days ago we did another presentation. Now tonight we're doing this. Now 3 days have passed, but now I'm here again. It feels like there's no time in between the two. When I go to bed tonight and wake up in the morning, 6-7 hours may have passed, but I have no awareness of that passage of time. All I know is my eyes closed, my eyes open. When we are told, and that God is eternal, the creative force is eternal. If the creative force is eternal, then it must also be subject to time,
Mhm,
because eternity is reference to time. So time, this discrete movement is everywhere. And
mhm,
when the creative force had the thought to create and to separate from unity, as we discussed before, then that is still confined to time, a time. Everything that happens is a time, which is the almost a measure, really. From the time I think to the time I create, a series of events has passed. So that is still time. So the
Mm-hmm.
very fact that God is eternal, the creative force is eternal, means that it is restricted to time. So it is everywhere. It's not just in the higher dimensions or the lower dimensions. It seems to be a natural thing. A natural thing. I mean, Einstein said it was fourth dimensional, but it is in every dimension, because every dimension has a series of discrete movements.
Mm-hmm. So, want to try to look at like timelines a little bit here and try to understand, the timeline with this looking glass, right? So this looking glass, it shows you future events of things that are happening, right? So that must mean, Mike, that at some parallel level, right, within this reality timeline, this thought reality that we're in, parallel to that, there is something else happening which we can't see, kind of like a layered cake, right? There's layers in it, and one layer can't see the other layer, and so on and so on. So if all these simultaneous things are happening, and when we, now I have to be careful with this, because now suddenly it doesn't sound so utopian anymore. So when we choose to incarnate into this human body, right, this avatar in this reality, and if we're existing in like these other realities at the same time, does that mean that when we take on this aspect, that this is just the fragment of an aspect, and the rest of the fragment of like this aspect, Omar, is spread out infinitely through other parallel thought patterns?
Yes, if you liken it to, you are a racing driver, Formula One racing driver, and you're speeding around the track, and your only awareness, your only focus is that you are a driver speeding around the track. What you are not aware of is that in the crowd there are other aspects of you watching you speed around that track that you have no awareness of. But they have an awareness of it because they can see the audience, they can see the track, they can see everything else. So it seems to be, if you get a hologram and you chop it up, it is all the original picture that is
Mm-hmm.
shattered and spread out into many different uh, fragments. So it seems that if you imagine, the central core, the self of who we are, has many branches, but the actual bark will always be the self, will always be the experience, will always be what is in control of those individual incarnations. So we are technically in many places at once, but we only have an awareness of being in one of them until something happens where your consciousness shifts to another place, which is often physical death or a near-death experience or something like that shifts your consciousness from here to somewhere else. And then obviously sometimes it shifts back again, and then you remember being in other places. So we are only aware of being the racing driver on the track, but we're not aware of our other fragments that are observing from the stands, watching
Mm-hmm.
us. And
So that kind of, yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
I was going to say so, but when we go back to the stands, then we become aware of everything and also what we did on the track.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. So that kind of explains that when we go to sleep at night and we're dreaming, right? That dream aspect is kind of like being that guy in the race car, right? Going around the track and not really seeing. You're only seeing it from that one perspective instead of from the bigger perspective. So dreaming could be something similar to where you're going into these parallel timelines and experiencing aspects of that timeline, and then bringing back memories of it, and so you recall and have that recollection of I was by the river last night, and then suddenly I was in a castle, and then I was went through a doorway, and I was parachuting, right? Like that really makes any sense, and it doesn't seem very coherent. But during the dream, right, and then during all of those aspects, having all those experiences, you're bringing back like a glimpse of it.
We'll dream again. You have the picture making forces of the soul, which is dreams, which is really often a future that is not yet materialized. Mm-hmm. So the question to ask is, because we spend so much of our life asleep, which one is the dream?
Yeah, I've asked that many times, and I think both of them are, right? Because if I approach this idea of myself, right, of this R, that's my name now, R, OMR, R, because there's an Om in my name, so I'm OMR. So this aspect of OMR is, has infinite aspects. And then within those infinite aspects, it's experiencing all of these experiences simultaneously at the very same time. And then when I'm in my natural state, right, natural state being that I am energy and part of a source or part of a soul group or, something like that. And that this right here occurs only when I incarnate, right? Because in my higher dimension, in my higher form of existence, in my natural form, say in the 13th dimension or the 14th, 15th dimension, in there, I'm part of the source energy. I'm absolute and the beginning and the end, the alpha and the omega. But then when I take this incarnation into this earth experience, right, this matrix, right, of this earth experience, this human experience, then when I incarnate into that, I am simultaneously incarnating into all of the others as well. So when I go to sleep at night, 8 hours of sleep, 12 hours awake, or 12 hours sleep, 12 hours awake, some people have that, then you're spending half your experience here, but the other half, you're bringing back like a memory aspect of it, right? Because all of it is happening at the same time. But would this be possible if we don't incarnate, right? And if we're in our natural self, right? Because the laws of whatever these are, does it only exist within the form of incarnation? Yeah, I think that would be the proper way to say it. The form of incarnation, because we're physical, right? Another timeline. Let's say you're somewhere else interdimensionally, and you appear as a ghostly figure over here, but in your reality, you're still solid, right? And you just appear ghostly over here, just as we would to them. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, our natural original state is the Lord of Spirit, which is unity, which is everything and nothing in simultaneous.
Mm-hmm.
We, in order for spirit to expand, you have to have matter. So the spirit, the Lord of Spirit, became the Lord of Matter, which is Satan, which is the negative side of God, who is the Lord of Spirit. So you have Lord of Spirit, Lord of Matter. Now Satan is the Lord of Matter alive. So when you only identify with your physical body, then you bring Satan alive within you. Mm-hmm. And that is why when some people say, but don't necessarily understand it, when they say we live in a satanic world, we do, because we live in a world that concentrates on material things. So that is bringing Satan alive within the material things. So our true original state is everything and nothing. It's simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. That would be like the zero state.
Yes, the zero state. Now, when the zero state becomes material, it becomes from 0 to number 1, which again is your binary. But we are trying to spiritualize matter. So if you imagine you have that then becomes that then spiritualizes and makes the unconscious conscious, and then returns to that. That is really what is happening. And when you make your unconscious conscious, when you spiritualize that matter by making the unconscious conscious, then when all the negative forces that were created during the fall are replaced with positive ones, then the debt is paid. So what we are all doing now is we are spiritualizing matter to experience and to expand spirit before it all returns to spirit into the simultaneous existence, nothing and everything. That is
like
what.
Yeah, I've been studying that and trying to get an understanding on that zero state, and it makes sense to me. Zero state seems to be field of information where everything exists and nothing exists, and when and then somehow it's manifested into like whatever it is that we see today, like for instance consciousness. Like consciousness would be the, I guess, the physical expression of the zero source. So consciousness would be like the first dimension, I would assume, right? Because with consciousness, if you observe something, or if you're observing something and that's manifested, and if it's manifested, then it has a form of consciousness infused into it or involved with it, like say an asteroid, or this cup right here, or this body, right? Because if it's observable, then it has a form of consciousness to it, and then that would be the expression of zero.
Yeah, zero. If you imagine that, take your mind out to you are the zero dimension, so you are everything, you are nothing. And again, I'll move that onto a microcosmic level in a moment. But you are there, and you are everything, you are nothing. You know that you are everything and you are nothing in this zero state, which means you have a consciousness, because you are an awareness. So even in the nothing, even in the zero state, there is awareness, there is consciousness. Now, when you take that into the subatomic level, by the way, the cup is conscious, the statue is conscious, the table is conscious, because the energy of whoever built it, the subatomic particles of it are conscious. So they are all conscious. Now, if you look at the subatomic world, subatomic particles can make a choice. They can actually individually choose to be a wave or a particle. A wave is non-physical. A particle is matter, it is physical. They can choose what state of existence they wish to be in. Now, when you look at that and you analyze what that means, it means that even a subatomic particle has great awareness. Because for one, if I'm a subatomic particle, now a proton, a neutron, an electron, a photon, whatever, and I say, today, I feel like being a wave, and I change to being a wave, well, that, for one, makes me conscious. That, for two, makes me have a decision-making process. And three, it makes me aware of what I already am in order to know what I want to be now. So today I want to be a wave, and tomorrow I wish to be a particle. So that tells me that even subatomic particles have great consciousness, a high level of consciousness. And that is the same in the zero levels, because it made the decision that in order to expand itself, something had to happen. It had to have some kind of resistance to expand itself, which is matter. If I go to a gymnasium and I wish to pump iron and develop the muscles, I have to have some form of resistance, which is your weights. Now, in terms of the law of spirit, its resistance is the law of matter. So without matter, it has no resistance to pump its iron, to expand it. Now, eventually, when all of this material nature is spiritualized, then we've worked out well at the gym, and then we return back to the law of spirit. Now, when the law of spirit expands, the creator of this universe expands. It is the natural state of everything to expand itself, whether that's a tiny little ant, whether that's the universe, which is expanding. Everything is a natural state of expansion and advancing yourself. So there's a lot of spirit that has gone to the gym to create resistance, which is matter, which will then be spiritualized, that will then advance the spirit.
Yeah, beautiful. What a great way to explain it. That was brilliant. Thank you. Let's hit this question and then we'll call it an afternoon, hitting close to 90 minutes. Michael and Omar, right? So Michael and Omar, any thoughts on the importance of gravity on dimensional separation and consciousness?
Right? Gravity and dimensional separation and consciousness. Right. Gravity is clearly a force. Some people argue that there's no such thing as gravity, but gravity is a force, and it goes back to where I was saying it is a resistance, it is a force, and we can manipulate gravity. You know, my phone now. If I drop my phone on the floor, that is a negative force. If I then pick the phone up, that is a positive force, but that is binary code 0, 1. So gravity is consistent with being a force. What people don't know, including science, is that there are 4 poles, not 2. So science tells us that there's a north and south pole, which push together to create Earth's electromagnetic field. But what it doesn't tell you is also there's an east and west force, a pole, which is known as the magneto-toroid effect. Now, those 2 side poles push and pull in the same direction. That is why planets are able to rotate, because of these 2 poles that science doesn't tell you about.
Mm-hmm.
So we have these forces now. There had to be, it sort of continues from my previous answer. There has to be a separation. The only way that we can have this reality, the only way that we can have knowledge, the only way that we can have perception is by complementary halves, because then we become recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have a comparison. So spirit has to have a comparison, and matter has to have a comparison, and everything lives in simultaneous existence. Some of it is manifest, some of it is unmanifest, but they still are bound forever together. Now, as explained before, at the moment, this is manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Physical death is unmanifest. At some point, because as I said, with the Garden of Eden and eternity, we step out of eternity into a very short time span. But death, at some point, physical death will become manifest, and this life will become unmanifest. It'll be in the world below. It'll be seemingly gone. But then at some point again, they will swap positions, and that is reincarnation. So everything everything has to have a comparison. If I was to say to Bill Van Horn, how do you feel today? He'll say, Michael, Omar, I feel great. How do you know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know that you feel great? Because yesterday you felt crap. You have to have a comparison to be able to get knowledge, to be able to recognize. And as I say, when I spoke a few days ago about the blank canvas, and I said, what is on that blank canvas? And you said nothing. And then I draw something. That drawing then becomes separated from unity to become recognizable, to become its own individual entity. So you have to have separation. Yes.
Yeah.
You have to have that separation in order to have a recognized individual being of existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that talk was brilliant.
And all of these things have forces. And now when you look at each of the force, you have the weak and the strong, which is duality. When you have electromagnetism, that's electricity, and magnetics, that is duality. When you have gravity, you also have an opposite, which is anti-gravity. So even they are separated from themselves to become dualistic, to become simultaneous existence.
Yeah, I guess everything in this reality density needs to have that polarity. Like, you're not going to know what love is without hating, and you won't know what hate is without loving, right? You don't know what pain is if you've never experienced pain, and so on and so on. Like, you're not going to know what
Yeah,
light is if you've never seen the darkness, and you won't know what
exactly.
darkness is if you haven't seen the light. And it's pretty amazing how this, this little density, this little cube or this little matrix that we're interacting with is very interesting, right? Now I wonder if it's the same in like other universes and parallel universes and different timelines and such, whether it holds the same type of laws of, I call it the laws of consciousness, right? Because that's kind of what it is. It has to be within that law of consciousness for a particular density anyways, for it to do what it needs to do, but has like a certain governor attached to it that it can only go so far, and then that's the limit. And then if you want to experience anything more than that, well, then you'll have to go to the next level, and then repeat, and same thing, and can kind of like traveling through stargates and just traveling upwards and traveling downwards, and has that infinite journey, right? Like on the whiteboard, because you draw a stick man on there and you manifest as a stick man, and you erase that, so that stick man is gone, but the memory imprint is left behind. And then you can take that stick man, draw it somewhere else on the board, just slightly different, and still it's the same but expressed differently. It's beautiful. I love it. So thank you
Ev-
very much.
no problem. Everywhere has laws. Every dimension has its own
Mhm.
laws. Every universe has its own laws. When the creator of this universe expands through the spiritualization of matter, it will expand into other universes. So
Yeah.
everything has laws. Everything has room to expand, and that is the beauty of, even infinity. You have infinity, but you have negative infinity, which is
Hmm.
one is expansion, one is shrinkage.
Yeah.
Everything,
Yeah.
everything has an opposite.
And I wonder if there's a universe out there that's shrinking like ours is expanding, right? Like the opposite of that, where it was like this big and then it starts and it's shrinking, because they say our universe is expanding, right? So I wonder if there's a opposite to that, to where there's a universe that collapsing in on itself and is parallel to this, and
Yeah.
we're experiencing that at the same time.
If you imagine that when something collapses in, then it comes out the other side. If I came from 1 to 10, and then came from 10 to 1, one's going one way, one's going the other. But it's like extra dimensions that we also have inside our DNA as well. That there's limitless space, and things can actually implode on themselves and come out the other side
Hmm.
and expand again. So it's almost like the seesaw of motion, and whatever encloses on itself will come out the other side and expand.
Yeah, it's kind of like the black hole and the white hole, because if you're observing it from this side, it looks like a black hole. But if you were on the other side of it, it would look like a white hole with matter coming out. And over here, it's expressed as a black with matter being sucked in. So you have the polarity of that there. That's beautiful. I love it. Thank you, Mike, for your contribution here to the Looking Glass Week. Learned a lot. Definitely, it was a different approach, and I loved it. And I knew that that's what you were going to do, because that's what you always do. You have a different perspective, and that's why I respect you and love you, because you always have a different view, and you're not following the narrative right across the board and just parroting the same thing. Not that I'm saying that my speakers are doing that, but I just like the fact that you have a different um, outlook on things, which is very refreshing. So before we close this stream off, maybe quickly run through your website and your YouTube channel where people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, thank you. The website is michael-feeley.com, F-E-E-L-E-Y. As I said, the different approach this evening was to validate what the other speakers were saying, because I've personally experienced what they're telling you that this technology can do. So it was really to validate from a different angle, to validate what they're saying. But that's really, if you go to the website, that really leads you into many different paths. So that's the best place to start.
There, guys, I'm going to toss it into the comments here as well. Visit Michael Feeley's website. I won't pull his books out again. Actually, I will. I like showing them off. Um, I read all of these books, and I tend to read like other books. This one was a really good one. Alchemy of the Gods. It's actually one of my favorites. The Secrets of the Pyramids is a very good book as well. If you guys are into pyramids and interesting knowledge, try to understand what that is. It's very cool. This is a super cool book, The Code of Christ. I think we did a talk on this, didn't we, Mike? We did a talk on that a little while back. And there's this one, The Ancient Code, A Serpent Fire, another good book. And you guys can get all of these at Michael's website, michael-feeley.com, and as well subscribe to Mike's YouTube channel, which I have right there on the screen in the banner there. Oops, I guess anyways, I was gonna. Here we go. Here's Mike's. I ended up pasting instead of copying. I'll toss Michael's YouTube channel down here as well. Guys, subscribe to that and hit the notification bell. Mike has some really great content on his channel, and lots of eye-opening stuff, things that you're not going to really hear anywhere else. And when you do hear them, you're going to be like, "What?" And then you'll have to go back and re-listen to it, and then after a while, you catch on to what Mike is saying, and it's incredible information. I've been following Mike for years now, and of course, our world-changing app, Favors, that we promoted here on Earth Day, and here is the Apple Store address, but you can just go to Apple Store, put in Favors, the app Favors, and I'm sure it will pop up. And same thing here on the Google Play Store. They're both available there for Android and for Apple. Favors, it's a wonderful app, as we talked about on Earth Day. If you need a favor, you put a favor down into the app, and someone in your community that has the app sees it, can respond to that, and give you that favor. Like if you need a ride, or if you need your nails done, or you're looking for a job, or you're looking for a house, or anything really. It's beyond whatever you can imagine. It can possibly be there, and it's nice humanity timeline changing type of app itself, because it's not based on any monetary value. It's just one human being looking after another human being, and it's a UK based app as well, from a friend of mine, Jade. So guys, look into that and grab that app. So we had a wonderful start here to our project Looking Glass week. Yesterday, of course, we had Frank Jacob on here, an epic download from him, and then now today from Mike, got another incredible download. And we've got who do we got coming up tomorrow, guys? You guys know, or are you on top of that? Tomorrow is what, the 26th. Tomorrow we have Brad Olson coming up at 2 o'clock. So that is going to be a wonderful talk. Always love talking to Brad. He's an amazing guy. So here it is, Looking Glass, tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And then on April the 30th, we're going to close it off with our Looking Glass panel with Frank Jacob, Kiera Windrider, Augie Nost, Michael Feeley, and Brad Olson. Guys, please share this stream out with friends and family on your social medias, because we need to get the word out on this Looking Glass, so that we can create and visualize the timeline that we wish to have. That's something that we want to experience as a unit, as one species, as a single society who's been given domain over this planet. And that domain comes with a lot of responsibility. It doesn't mean we go and kill everything on the planet and destroy the planet. That's not the domain. I don't think God meant when he said that you have domain over the fowls and the birds and the animals, right? That he was talking about custodianship. So that's kind of what we need to visualize in our mind, where we're living in peace with one another, living with peace and harmony with the animal kingdom, where we're not encroaching onto their space and we're not abusing them. And most importantly, we're not abusing one another. And whatever that these guys are going to try to do, the cabal is what they're going to try to do. It's beyond our control, and they will do what they will do. But if we stay steadfast onto our own vision and our own thoughts and what we want to create, and bring it from the heart space, then that is what's going to manifest, because that's what everyone has been saying so far, is that no matter what they do, every timeline that they look at, 2030, it's there's an event that's happening, and that is going to really, ascend humanity into a different plane. Maybe there's a galactic plane. I think it has something to do with that, of like the galactic plane doing something. We'll find out more tomorrow from Brad Olson on that. I have a lot of questions for Brad. He's actually part of his esoteric series that he's written. I believe it was in Future Esoterics. He alluded something to the Looking Glass and the Yellow Cube Greta treaty, and a handful of other things that we're going to talk about with him tomorrow and explore that aspect of it. So, guys, thank you. And Michael, any parting words for our friends until our panel?
Yeah, again, your future, your destiny is really in your hands, because, as I say, you are the projector, and your future is the projection. So whatever you are projecting is the future that you'll be walking into. So make sure that you choose some nice slides.
I'm projecting 4 million subscribers. We just projected ourselves 4,000 subscribers a couple of days ago. The channel is on fire, guys. The channel is doing very, very well, and we've accumulated like 40 or 50 subs in the last days. So thank you to all the new subscribers and all the returning subscribers. I really appreciate your support. And if you guys can join the channel as a member to support me in doing what I'm doing and continuing to bring conscious-based content, that helps me a great deal, and I appreciate a lot. And thank you. And my name is Omar, coming at you guys from West Coast, British Columbia, Canada. I'm a host here at Watchers Talk with my guest and my friend Michael Feeley, coming at you guys from the UK, from the future, my future and his past. I'm in his past. So hopefully we're all going to be on the same page here soon. So I love you guys, and I will see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock p.m. with Brad Olson. And check the description of this video for links, and subscribe to my newsletter, and stay in touch and join my Telegram chat room for real-time conversations. Love you all. Share this video. See you tomorrow.